Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. We are now in mid-February. I have a brand new garden with basically nothing in it, and in my quest to be self-sufficient and because I have a love of apple trees, I have decided to plant some apple trees. Now that sounds very simple, but it's not. Because we live on this island, it's very hard for me to get anything here that is reasonably costing and exactly what I want. So I have a north-facing garden that has quite a lot of exposure to the wind, and I cannot get the kind of trees that I want to grow here. So what are my requirements? Well, I want an MM106 rootstock because it's semi-vigorous, it won't grow too big, it means that I can have fruit within 5 years. And what I want to do in the front garden is to keep my view, so I don't want full-size standard or half-standard trees. I want to grow espaliers. Now, apart from the fact that I want to keep my view, and therefore I want to keep the trees kind of small, I want them branching off to provide fruit. And it occurred to me that the best method for me to have a variety of fruit, because if you're clever, you can grow apples from August right through to December. Now, we're up in the Isle of Arran. We do have the benefit of the Gulf Stream, which means we don't really get hard winters here, but we have challenging climatic conditions. We're near the sea. We have a lot of wind. It does get cold in the winter. It rains a lot as well. So by planting and growing, training my apples to grow as espaliers and reducing the height, I will be giving them a bit of protection. And on the branches of the espalier, I can graft more than one variety of apple. So what's this video about? Well, this video is going to show you how to choose rootstocks for your particular situation, how to graft those rootstocks using scions or cuttings from established apple trees, and I will also throw in at the end how to grow your own rootstocks and thus give yourself free rootstock stock for future years. Now, this has been a trade secret. I have done this for the last, at least 15 years, and it saves me the cost of buying new rootstock. So remember and watch it to the end of the video to find that out. If you are intending to grow more than a couple of apple trees, let's face it, apple trees are not cheap. You want the right rootstock, you want the right variety, and the easiest and cheapest way to do that is to grow your own rootstocks and to propagate your own apples by grafting. So this video is going to show you what you need, and it's going to show you how to do that. So I will be doing little videos inside the house. I will be doing videos outside, and there are some slides that I've taken because this is February to show you what your finished graft should look like if it's successful and the future of your apple tree cultivation. So watch the video, learn a new skill, gain confidence in your grafting, and remember, grafting doesn't have to be just for apples. You can basically graft loads of different fruit trees and other species of plants. So a lot of people graft roses. That's not my thing, but you might want to graft cherries, you might want to graft pears, I concentrate on apples. Apples are my babies. So have a look. Any questions, pop them down in the comments and we'll just crack on. Okay, so you all know what a pair of secateurs looks like. So, knife. This is my grafting knife and it's quite small, it's very sharp, and after I use it, I give it a wipe over with a clean cloth dipped in either methylated spirits, white spirit, or if I don't have that, vodka. So it keeps it clean. It stops it passing any infection from any tree to my grafts because I want to do the best job I can, and this little knife is pretty good. If you don't want to buy one of these, then what you can do is use a Stanley knife. Again, make sure the blade's clean. You will need a cutting block. Don't do this on your kitchen worktop, guys. Just get a cutting block, a breadboard or whatever. Make sure it's clean. That is sufficient. Grafting tape. Now, I buy grafting tape. It comes in a roll. I get it off a very famous internet site and it is stretchy. You can tear it and you need a bit of give in it. And the reason is it needs to be tight for the grafts, but it also needs to be flexible enough for you to stretch it to get tight enough. And ordinary grafting tape is great. If you don't want to go to the expense of that or you don't have it available wherever you are, you can use polythene bags. Yes, you can. I do know people who use wax, horticultural wax for grafting. I've never really done it. I don't feel confident to do that. And if you're top grafting, and what I mean by that is if you have a tree with a big diameter that you wish to top graft onto. So up at my friend's garden, he lost a lot of apple trees in Storm Éowyn, and some of those that we could not save, we have cut to about 4 foot tall, about 1.5 meters tall, and we've just given them a clean cut over the top, and we are going to top graft them with a couple of grafts, and that is called rind grafting. So what I use for that, because I would use an awful lot of tape, I use gaffer tape. So it's quite thick, haven't got any here to show you, but that works just as well. The aim to use the tape is to bind your scion to the parent tree, and you want to exclude any air to stop the parent tree and the scion from drying out, because what you want is a join, and to make that join take, you are pushing them together, and the tape helps you do that, to exclude the air and to make sure that the green cambium layer, I will talk about this further on, is firmly attached. So, secateurs, knife, tape. You may want to get a couple of labels and write on them in pencil or in waterproof felt pen the variety that you are grafting onto the tree, because you won't remember, especially if you're doing multiple grafts. So label everything and put a little note in your diary or on your computer or somewhere to tell yourself what variety you did and when you did it. So we're outside. I have borrowed a large pot with holes at the bottom for drainage. I have half filled the pot with half a grow bag, but I'm not planting these apple trees here. I am only keeping the roots covered until it's time for me to plant out, because I don't know exactly where I want to plant them yet, and I want to plant them all at the same time. So I'm going to show you the rootstocks, but John has been to a cheap supermarket where they were selling apple trees as a special offer. So you might see these in Lidl's or Aldi's or B&M or any of these places. I don't know where he got these. I'm a bit annoyed that he bought them, because as you can see, they are half standard. So the branches start off there, and I'm not doing that in this garden, but I wanted to show you this. So the rootstock join. So everything below here is what you see under the ground, and you can see this dark mark, and that is the soil level. So when you're planting these, you don't really want to come above that, and you definitely don't want to plant so that the rootstock is below the ground. So this is the root area. This is the grafted variety. So this variety is Golden Delicious. So Golden Delicious, not a great choice, wouldn't be my choice, but the fact that he's bought this gives me two options. So if you couldn't resist the bargain of an apple tree like this, then yes, you can plant it in the ground, or you can use the tops, the growing tips, as scions, and that's what I intend to do, but that is for possibly later on in this video. You'll have to wait and see. The roots themselves, because these are cheap trees, mass produced, are not brilliant. There are a couple of roots there. Those are adventitious roots, so these might turn into roots. It's got a bit of a solid root which will anchor it, and a couple of little tiny roots there. I'm not holding out a lot of rope, but I'm going to just put that in, cover up the roots, and that will stop that from drying out until I'm ready to plant it. Now, I'm working over here because it's light and I've got a bit of room to work, but I'm going to move this pot into a more sheltered area, because as I keep telling you, it's windy here. So I'm going to do the same with this one. This is Cox Orange Pippin. Not a brilliant variety for the west coast of Scotland. Not great in any western damp, muggy areas. So it tends to get canker. Lovely apples. Great if you're on the eastern side of the country. But again, it's got lots and lots of nice growing tips, which I can use as scions. So I'll do that one in a minute. Apologies for the background noise. John is chopping firewood with the chainsaw. So, Cox's Orange Pippin, much better root development on that. It's been sent to me packaged in a mixture of compost and sawdust, and then wrapped round with cling film, or food wrap as you might call it in the States. But again, just covering up the roots so it doesn't dry out. So I've received this packet. I'm going to show you how this is packaged. So this box arrived from Buckingham Nurseries, and really well packaged rootstocks, all labelled MM106 and really well packaged, and I'm taking them out to have a look at them, and that is a really nice rootstock, lots of nice roots. That's a cracker. That is fantastic, but they need to be damp and they've dried out a little bit. Really, really nice rootstocks. So what I'm going to do is soak these in some tepid water, and then I'm going to put them in that bucket of compost. So really pleased, Buckingham Nurseries, thank you very much. Excellent. And just a word on picking your rootstock supplier. If you're buying them and not doing your own, I will be doing my own from now on, but these have been sent, and normally some nurseries will remove the top half of that rootstock and send you something that's about a foot long. If you can get something like this, watch the end of the video to find out how I propagate my own rootstocks. But I'm very happy with this. This is really nice quality. So, I'm going to pop them in. And then I'll get a bucket of water and soak them and then pop them back in there. Right, I'm just putting this wee bit in here because the taping of the two parts together is really fiddly. So practice on a couple of pieces of similar sized twigs until you get the hang of it. You need to be able to work out how much tension you can put on whilst keeping the two parts pressed firmly together. The firmer you can get that join and that taping, the more chance you have of success. And I know it's hard. It took me hours to be able to do it. I found that the more acute the slope was, gave you more surface area, because what you're trying to do when you're cutting that scion, you're exposing the green cambium layer, and you put that green cambium layer cut against the similar green cambium layer cut on your rootstock or your scion, whichever way you've done it. So press them together. Your skin mustn't touch the cut layers, and that's where it is fiddly. So I don't know, maybe you want to try and clamp the scion, but practice makes perfect. I know it's hard, but you can do it. I learned, everybody can learn, and it's not an inbuilt skill that you're born with. So cut them as acutely diagonal as you can. Press them together, hold one side, and start underneath the cut. So you're winding over the totality of the two cut layers. So you would start over here and you would finish way back there. And then you've got to try and tie it off, or you can sellotape that little bit. It probably won't work with sellotape because you're going to put it outside and it will get wet, but maybe a blob of wax. But I tie mine and it does work. So don't be disheartened if it doesn't work right away. Practice first. Practice makes perfect. So you can save money and time and get the rootstocks that you want if you propagate your own rootstocks. And there's three main methods of doing this. The first is to plant apple pips and grow your own apple tree. Now, the issue with that is, although it's quite successful and you can grow apples from pips, you won't know what that apple will turn out like. So if you eat a Golden Delicious from a supermarket, the pips in that Golden Delicious will not grow to produce a Golden Delicious tree. They will grow an apple tree, but these trees, when they are flowering and pollinating and producing fruit, may look like a Golden Delicious apple. However, they have got a mixture of genetics because apple blossom and apples are pretty promiscuous, and they will breed with any other apple tree that is flowering nearby. So when you grow that apple from pips, the best thing that you can do is, once it is a year or 2 years old, is to chop the apple fairly straight right across about 9 inches from the ground, and then top graft it or rind graft it or whip graft it with a scion of your chosen variety. That will then grow into an apple tree that will have apples of your choice. So if you want a gala apple, you can graft a scion from a bona fide gala apple on top of that. If you just leave it to flower and fruit, you don't know what you're going to get. The issue with that is, because you've grown that from a pip, you have no idea how the rootstock is going to behave, because it is the rootstock that affects the vigour and overall size of your apple tree. So the second way of propagating your own rootstock is to use rooted suckers from an existing apple tree. If you know that that apple is on a specific rootstock, such as M25 or M106, then that's fine. If you don't, then again, you're faced with that unknown quantity of, you don't know how vigorous the tree is going to be, you don't know how the overall size is going to be, but you can use those rooted suckers to grow a chosen scion on. The third method, which is the method that I use, which is a lot more easy, is when you have originally bought your MM106 or M25 or M11 or whatever rootstock, part of the grafting process, as you will have seen, is to cut the rootstock about 6 to 9 inches above the ground, and you're going to use that rootstock to graft your chosen variety onto. The piece that you cut off can be inserted into the ground or into a pot. I tend to use part of my vegetable garden, and I label it MM106 cutting or MM106 rootstock. And I write on the label with a pencil, because it tends to last longer than supposedly permanent markers, when you did that. So if you've got your rootstocks and you have grafted them in February, then you would mark on that grafted rootstock February 2005 or whatever. You push that into the ground. I haven't got a pencil here. Right, we're just going to use this pen. So this is, if you imagine it longer, the top of the original rootstock that you have cut off, and it is spare, if you follow that. So imagine this is a foot long. Then what I would do is just push this rootstock into the ground, half of its length. So if it's a foot long, 6 inches are going into the ground. So there's my ruler, 30 centimetre ruler, 15 centimetres would go into the ground. Now you can do this in pots. You can push about 4 or 5 into a decent sized pot, and just keep it in a cool, semi-shaded place that's sheltered, and wait a year. So next February, you would gently dig that up, and your rootstock should have some roots on it. Now, I tend to leave mine 2 years. How do I know if it's taken? If I'm doing this in February, then by June or July, you should see fresh growth coming from that. So there could be a couple of buds, there could be some leaves or whatever. If it's brown and dried up, you can gently dig it up and see if there is any roots on it. If there are, plant it back in the ground, give it a water, or leave it alone till next year. If it's dry and there is no growth, no roots, chuck it and start again the following year. I tend to get 90% success on this method. Once it's grown next year or the year after with a good supply of roots, then you can use that as your next rootstock. That is it. It's not magic, but it is a trade secret that not very many people will tell you, and that is how I graft my rootstocks. When I've got this rootstock in 2 years' time, it should be at least 4 foot tall. I can use that as a rootstock for grafting that year, and because I've got an extra 3 foot on it, I can cut that into 2 or 3 lengths, replant them, and they will grow more rootstocks. It's as simple as that.